Hello, I'm Rafael, a Brazilian PhD candidate in environmental science at the University of São Paulo. I'm honored to be part of this workshop. Over the last 9 years, I have worked with environmental education process in non-governmental organizations with the aim of marine conservation. In the field of environmental education, dialogue is an important principle to be used and at the same time a goal to achieve. In my master's, I investigated one of these processes, which became the article that I will present to you now. And I used dialogue as an analytical framework to investigate the relationship between an NGO and artisanal fishers towards a sustainable fishery. The context of the research was a project developed by an NGO called BIOPESCA Institute, in which I participated. The institute acts in the marine conservation of the Franciscan dolphin and sea turtles. The project, called Friendly Fishermen, lasted 2 years, 2013 to 2015, and had a sponsorship from the company Petrobras. The area of work reached the entire central coast of São Paulo, encompassing 80 municipalities. The general aim consisted of monitoring and amplifying knowledge of the impact of dolphin and sea turtle bycatch on the central coast of the state of São Paulo, as well as sensitizing and capacitating fishers, with focus on responsible fishing practice. With that objective in mind, the NGO promoted research activities to monitor the fishing activity in order to verify the occurrence of bycatch. There were also environmental education activities, which were divided into 5 stages. First, interviews to better understand the different fishing communities and identify their interest in participating in future meetings. Second, participative diagnoses with the purpose of identifying the fishing situation. Third, course on sustainable entrepreneurship. Fourth, course on responsible fishing practice. And finally, the last stage was the contest of responsible fishing practices with the purpose of stimulating the fishers to share their ideas or thinking up new ones to reduce the problem of dolphins and turtle bycatch. This research sought answer to the following question: do research and environmental education activities developed by an NGO with artisanal fishers on the São Paulo state coast promote dialogue in search of the transition to responsible fishing and the improvement of the fishers' existing conditions? The theoretical framework used in this research is based on a synthesis of the idea present in David Bohm's and William Isaacs' groups of dialogue and Paulo Freire's circles of culture, aiming to potentialize the experience of dialogical existence suggested by Martin Buber. To do this, 3 categories of analysis, which possess indicator questions, were elaborated based on that synthesis. The first category, entitled External Aspects, refers to the structure of the meeting, the number of people, their arrangement, the frequency of the meetings, and the acoustics of the location. The second, Internal Aspects, is connected to the people's attitudes, the deliberation through dialogue, the listening, the face of conflicts, the suspension of presuppositions, the foundness, the faith, the trust, the humility, the hope, the revealing of historical cultural aspects, and critical thinking. The final category, Dialogical Action, refers to the culture circle aspects, such as openness, so that all those interested can accomplish the process of thematic investigation, the solidification of the thematic investigation circles and the cultural circles. In this video, I will only present the results concerning the internal aspects and dialogical action. To attain the objectives of this research, a qualitative approach was adopted, using the case study as epistemological inspiration. 4 stages of collection and data analysis were performed for the construction of this research: bibliographic review, semi-structured interview. In total there were 23 interviews, 6 with members of the NGO and 17 with fishers from 5 municipalities from the extension of the project's area. Documentary research, which allows us to analyze 19 documents elaborated by the NGO, and data analysis, which had the purpose of identifying indications of dialogue in the relationship between NGO members and fishers, using the 3 categories of analysis. It was possible to identify the presuppositions of the individuals. The NGO entered the relationship guided by presuppositions of marine conservation, of endangered species, and the FAO's Code of Conduct for Responsible Fisheries. The fishers, in turn, entered the relationship with distrust and fear, in light of previous relations with other organizations. For them, such organizations use them to their own benefit, without considering their claims. Finally, they are afraid of sanctions fixed by Brazilian law on the capture of endangered animals. In light of these presuppositions and the work proposed by the NGO, a significant conflict arose between the actors right from the first contacts, and it lasted throughout the 2 years of work. This conflict initiated 2 types of relationships between the NGO and the fishers, one that we call anti-dialogical and the other incipient dialogical. This relationship among the NGO and a group of fishers was marked by polarization, since the actors adhered to their respective presuppositions, impeding empathy, listening, faith, humility, and trust as suggested by the authors of dialogue. In response to the resistant posture of the fishers, the members of the NGO adopted a persuasive strategy in the attempt to get closer. Such an attitude can be understood as an attempt at domination of the other and cultural invasion, characteristic of the anti-dialogical attitude as defended by Freire. Consequently, the persuasion brought more anti-dialogicity to the relationship, setting off moments of verbal violence among the participants. In this manner, it is possible to perceive that there was no emergence of a relation dialogical field among these participants over the 2 years of the project. On the other hand, dialogical potentialities were identified, such as the fact that the fishers recognized the presuppositions of the NGO's marine conservation, and the NGO recognized their distrust and fear. This recognition is an important first step in the emergence of dialogue. This relationship, initiated between the NGO members and other fishers, different from those cited in the previous relationship, presented dialogical indications. The fishers affirmed that respect, openness to the other, and humility were present in the relations among the actors. As the relationship unfolded, the fishers could suspend their presuppositions of fear and distrust concerning the NGO, resulting in collaborative work. However, it is worth highlighting that this collaborative work seems to have been based on the NGO's presuppositions of marine conservation, which were adopted by the fishers open to the relationship and who suspended their own presuppositions about such organizations. Thus, it can be inferred that the emergence of the incipient dialogical relationship happened much more because of the fishers' attitudes, who were open to suspending their presuppositions, listening to and respecting the other, as suggested by Bohm and Isaacs, than because of the NGO's attitude, given that it approached all of the fishers in the same manner, establishing with some a relationship marked by anti-dialogicity. It was possible to identify the beginning of a dialogical action as suggested by Freire in the participative diagnoses. However, it didn't evolve to the other phases and therefore was a suppressed dialogical emergency. In light of all the results discussed above, it was possible to affirm that the relationship of the actors was marked by the inception of dialogue. The process of environmental education developed was characterized by the promotion of environmental conservation with no consideration for social-cultural aspects and a lack of critical vision of the values and beliefs behind the processes of production and consumption, which are promoters of anti-dialogicity. This environmental education does not promote a transition to a new model of fishing, as the NGO involved intended. It adopts and reinforces the markers of anti-dialogicity. It is relevant to recognize that the transition to a new model of fishing should happen in conjunction with a transition to new forms of interpersonal relations, surpassing the predominant anti-dialogical values, heading toward new values that permit, in an increasingly intense form, the experience of a dialogical existence. Thank you all for your attention, and I will leave my email in the last scene. Goodbye.